Chapter 19. Chapter 9. Harry Potter versus himself, PT. 3. Draco Malfoy wandered outside of the Dada classroom, a thoughtful and solitary figure. As he passed a dusty side corridor, no doubt created during the castle's recent shuffling, I muttered, "Accio, Malfoy." Malfoy's gasp mingled with a more distant yelp as he stumbled towards us. With a nervous glance around the seemingly empty corridor, Malfoy said, "P. Potter." I whipped off the cloak, revealing Hermione and myself. Striding towards him, I said, "What gave me away? The strength of my spell casting. The brilliance of my plan, the subtle scent of 'you were invisible,'" he said. I paused, not at all appreciating Hermione's giggles. "Right, yes, I suppose that makes sense." Malfoy glanced back towards the entranceway, which shimmered with invisibility and silencing spells. "What are you doing here, Potter? You shouldn't have. Wait, have you been here all year, skulking around under your cloak?" I leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed. "Perhaps." Hermione rolled her eyes. "No." "I could have been," I said. "That doesn't change the fact that you weren't," Hermione said, maliciously diminishing my reputation. Malfoy drummed his fingers against his wand, body half-turned towards the exit. "You still haven't explained what you're doing here." "I have a proposition for you." I twirled my wand between my fingers. "How would you like to join Hermione's dark army?" "Harry, you are not." I raised a hand to silence her. "Quiet, Hermione. If you aren't going to be proactive, then I'll have to do this for you." "Granger has an army," Malfoy said, still too blinded by Hermione's innocent image and his own lingering feelings to imagine it. I nodded. "We're still in the early recruiting stages, which offers you a chance to get in on the ground floor. With Hermione's brilliant, vicious mind and your financial resources, as well as the lessons you've learned from my trials, you could completely replace the government within a decade. I understand that you may be reluctant to follow someone with lesser blood than you. I can assure you, however, that that would not be the case in this instance." "You will not," Hermione cut off as my silencing spell hit her. She glared daggers at me, but I spoke firmly. "He has a right to know." I turned back to the curious blonde with a smile. "Rowena Ravenclaw had a second daughter, a squib. She never talked about her, of course, because she was a squib." Malfoy sneered. "Understandable. That daughter had children of her own. Eventually, her descendants moved to Australia, where their magical blood rekindled to form the Granger family. Generally, the Grangers have been an odd and reclusive clan, keeping well away from even the Australian Magical Society. Upon discovering their relation to Hogwarts' founder, however, they chose to send their latest child to study abroad." Hermione had finally worked off the silencing charm. "I am not the heiress of Ravenclaw." "Really? If it isn't true, then why are you denying it?" I demanded. Taken aback by my stunning logic, she turned to the much more gullible Malfoy. "You don't believe this tripe. It would explain a few things," he admitted. "But no, you're actively denying it, and I've learned my lesson about listening to Potter." "Oh, thanks, Cersei," Hermione sighed. "I hope you'll still join," I said, despite Hermione's incessant secret-keeping. Malfoy frowned, clearly put off by the heiress's antics. "I suppose." "Wonderful," I exclaimed. "First order of business, eliminating the competition. Hermione." Malfoy let out a strangled squeak as my best minion explained. "We've been collecting several objects necessary to kill you-know-who. All we need is the diadem of Ravenclaw, Hermione's family heirloom," I interjected. "Unfortunately, it's still in the room of requirement, which is locked. Luckily, you," I tapped him on the chest with my wand, "have part of the key. I figure we can get the rest by dinner." Foy raised an eyebrow. "Dinner? It took me over a year to get the last 5 pieces." "I designed it to be completed in about 3 months," I said. "Trust me, we'll be in by dinner." Malfoy's eye twitched. I smirked. "Hermione, you can grab Ron in the trunk while we tackle the next trial. Meet us at the room of requirement." "All right." Hermione cast a disillusionment charm on herself. "Draco, I need you to throw a snake at me." Malfoy paused for a moment. "Mind repeating that, Potter?" "Throw a snake at me," I cried. Quickly, there's no time to explain. Draco threw a snake at me. I recognized the pattern of black and green scales immediately. "Arphian," the snake peered upwards, scenting the air. "You are a speaker." "You don't remember me?" I asked. The snake hissed a no. With a heavy sigh, I vanished it. "Harry," Hermione snapped. "Why did you do that?" "He wasn't the same, so I killed him," I explained. Malfoy paled and demonstrated an appropriate level of fear, and all by taking a step away from me. Hermione groaned. Harry, are you under the Imperius again? And he kept planning partner activities even though I was the only one who attended class, Draco ranted. I thoughtfully caressed my wand. So you would consider the Dark Lord a fairly bad professor then? Yes, Draco said. I mean, he's probably the best Dada teacher I've ever had, but he's still horrible. While talking, we had entered the third-floor corridor which sometimes held the entrance to the room of requirement. Ron and Hermione were waiting for us by the locked door, and Hermione hurried over. Oh, good. I was worried you would. Is Malfoy wearing leather pants? I glanced at the tight, black pants Draco was currently sporting. Technically, it's dragon hide. It protects you from fire. Yes, but why? She pressed, yet again demonstrating her intense curiosity about the world at a wildly inappropriate time. Dragons breathe fire. It's a part of their metaphysical nature. Not that, Hermione snapped. Why is he wearing them? I glanced towards the door to confirm that Ron and Hermione had not suddenly swapped places. To protect him from fire, of course. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Then why isn't he wearing a shirt? It caught on fire. For Merlin's sake, Hermione, keep up. Ron, noticing Draco's shirtless state, came over to glare at him. I still don't trust you. Why are you even helping us anyway? I don't believe in the Dark Lord's tenets any more accepting the creature's rights laws, Draco said. The fourth trial taught me a lot about acceptance, and I can't seem to unlearn it. Ron snorted. So you're suddenly our friend. Draco crossed his arms over his bare chest and sneered. Don't worry, Weasel. I still think you're a pathetic, idiotic Gryffindor. You didn't mention that he's poor, I pointed out. The second trial taught me what it's like to have nothing, Draco smirked. I imagine that how Weasley feels all the time. I do not, Ron roared, jabbing his wand against Draco's chest. Hermione batted it down with her own wand, glaring at them. Enough, let's stop bickering and go into the room. Draco paused. We can't. Why not? Hermione said coldly, Ron looming above her. Draco pulled 6 silver objects from his dragon hide pants. They glowed slightly where they touched each other. The key still isn't complete. Right, yes, I almost forgot about that. I rifled through my pockets. Here you go, Draco. Draco stared at the item in my hand. You had the final piece. The whole time. He snatched the rest of the key, glowering at the 3 of us. Then it wasn't fair at all. Sure it was. You could have learned a lesson about friendship or espionage or possibly seduction. Ron asked, is that why he's not wearing a shirt? But you weren't even in the castle this year, Draco said. Yet, when you needed the final piece, I was. Perhaps I always would have been. Draco growled at me, and with a burst of light, the pieces united into an ornate silver key. He stomped towards the door and stuck it into the lock. The key broke, its pieces disappearing, and the door remained closed. The blonde whirled around, glowering. It broke. I hurried forward. Draco, don't you deserve to get in? Draco sneered. Of course I do. I did all your stupid trials and learned so many lessons, I mused. If you truly deserve to go in, then why would you need a key? You're kidding me, he said flatly. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Draco, open the door. Young Malfoy turned the knob and the door smoothly opened. You see, I said, the true key was within you all along. All you had to do was believe in yourself. Draco gazed into the room of requirement, which was empty save for the pedestal holding Ravenclaw's diadem. I spent a year and a half tracking down the key pieces, all for a key that I didn't need. I chuckled, pushing past him. Just because the key doesn't open the door doesn't mean you don't need the key. My 3 minions followed me inside. Ravenclaw's diadem, Hermione breathed. She collapsed against the doorway to gaze upon her ancestor's artifact. Grinned, opening my trunk to store the diadem with my other Horcruxes. You aren't putting it on? Ron asked. I blinked. What? You know, the diadem. The whole point of it is to put it on right. It makes you smarter and stuff. Hermione clucked her tongue. It's a strange magical artifact that may very well be cursed. Of course, he isn't just tossing it on his. Merlin, I'm so stupid. So many missed opportunities, so many overlooked alliances, so many times I shouldn't have gotten drunk. You put it on, Hermione sighed. Of course you did. She thought I'd been acting foolishly, but she was wrong. Her point regarding the possibility of my diadem being cursed was a fair one, particularly considering the fact that it was cursed. However, this was the wisest thing I'd ever done. I should have worn it years ago, rather than making the Horcrux, or I even could have done both. Sure, people would try to steal it, but I would guard it heavily regardless of whether it contained my soul. Harry. Ron asked weakly. He sounded cautious but concerned. Of course he did, he was fond of me, and I've proven myself to be somewhat childish, even insane. What a fool I was. Harry, are you all right? Hermione asked. No, I wasn't. I was an idiot. Why did I even want to be the defense teacher anyway, or to be immortal? What was the point? I grabbed the diadem, flinging it towards Hermione. Hermione, destroy it. Hermione rolled her eyes. It's a relic, Harry. I won't damage a vital piece of history simply because you don't like the truth. Besides, we need it for the ritual. She put it on. My eyes widened. No, you fool. Take it off right now and perhaps you'll escape. Merlin, I'm so stupid. Ron plucked it off her head. Hermione swayed, mumbling, oh, that really was awful. Ron tucked it under his arm. Draco sneered. Aren't you putting it on? You might finally learn what it's like to have normal intelligence. Ron rolled his eyes and remarked, nah, I already know I've been dumb. Why, you want it? Draco paled. You can keep it. Ron shrugged, tossing it back to me. I slung it over my shoulder, which I imagine gained incredible insight into the world but was unable to share it due to being a shoulder. Hermione, meanwhile, had approached Ron. She smiled. When I was wearing the diadem, I realized that we could be dead in a couple of hours, and I never would have told you that I liked you. Which is just so absolutely stupid because you obviously like me too. So I was wondering if perhaps, presuming the diadem isn't cursed to give misleading information, Ron leaned down to kiss her, and she enthusiastically reciprocated. I watched, dumbfounded, Ron and Hermione. Wow, I did not see that coming. Draco turned away, unable to watch his first love with another man. I said, I'm so sorry, Draco. He raised an eyebrow and drawled, Potter, I'm disgusted. Sure you are, I said, but if you ever need to talk about this, I can lend you Ginevra. Come to think of it, you can keep her. Draco sneered at me, a sure sign that he was feeling better. I don't want your girlfriend, Potter. He'd even discovered his sense of humor. I said, we should get back to the rebel base to regroup. Along the way, Hermione can devise one of her evil schemes. Hermione tore herself from the snog for an indignant, I don't devise evil schemes. I rolled my eyes. One of your regular schemes, then. Hermione would find a way to make it evil. Draco stood atop the staircase. Lost in thought, he steadied himself on the slimy wall. Even after my trial down here, I'm still shocked that you ended up being the heir. Why does everyone think that? It was Ginevra. Draco snapped out of his reverie and snatched his hand from the muck-lined wall with a wet pop. After a panicked cleaning charm, he said, a Weasley the heir of Slytherin. Ron said, well, why not? You're Gryffindors, he spat. I chuckled. Just because someone is a Gryffindor doesn't mean they aren't a Slytherin. Right, Hermione? Hermione pushed past us and into the darkness, muttering about morons, probably Ron's fault. We hurriedly followed. I said, to be fair, Ginevra is a seventh child. Draco said, you can't expect me to believe that the Weasleys managed to squeeze a Parselmouth from their impure blood, no matter how many children they pop out. Ron's face flushed bright red, but his angry exclamation was cut short by a calm voice below us. I'm quite certain Ginny's a Parselmouth. She taught me how to say my name in it and everything. There is no word in that language which comes anywhere near Luna's name. I shudder to think what horribly mispronounced nickname Ginevra had bestowed upon the poor girl. The blonde was cheerfully waiting at the bottom of the steps with Hermione, who said, Luna's guarding the door. You aren't Death Eater's Polyjuice to look like you four, are you? The blonde politely inquired. Draco raised an eyebrow. If that were the case, why would I be here? I'm not sure why you're here anyway, Ron muttered. I said, to be fair, the Death Eaters might have run out of Polyjuice. That would be pathetic, Draco said. It sounds fairly typical for them, really, I mused. Ron chose to use his brain, and as always, the result was a terrible disappointment. Could you even beat that many Death Eaters, Luna? Hermione pursed her lips. It's more about sounding the alarm, Ronald. If she couldn't, why would they bother using Polyjuice? I added, I'll be fine. Neville even loaned me the sword of Gryffindor. Luna hefted the sword and waved it at us. Hermione's eye twitched violently. You are a true Gryffindor. Not really, she said. It's more about how you hold it. Is that my house elf? Draco demanded, glaring into the chamber where Darby was scurrying about with a tray of sandwiches. Oh, yes, Luna said. Apparently he's been stealing from you for several years. I think he's a true Slytherin. Draco's agitated gaze swept over the room, eyes widening when he reached a small crowd towards the center. Snape. He's more of a Ravenclaw, Luna said. Draco rushed over to the crowd. I sedately followed. With a casual incarcerus to tie up Draco, Ginevra said, "Hi, Harry. I didn't know you were going to kidnap Malfoy." "Hermione recruited him, actually," I said. "Ha!" Ginevra glanced down at the struggling, rope-bound boy at her feet. "I guess she's wanted him for a while, so good for her." I gestured towards the man bound to a wooden chair. "I see you've kidnapped Snape." "Astute as ever, Potter," Severus said. "We took him right from his office," Neville said, lifting up the sorting hat as an odd trophy. It remained inactive, still, and deflated in his grasp. Ginevra beamed. "We've got the headmaster, so we're pretty sure we own the school now." "That's ridiculous. We're in the exact same situation we were this morning," Hermione said. "Yeah, but now Snape can awaken the castle and drive out the invaders," Ginevra continued. Hermione's eyes fluttered at this new and overwhelming information. "Awaken? I'm sorry." I explained. "The castle is a living being, capable of controlling all within its walls." "Only the headmaster can call it to action, though," Ginevra said. "Cute, do you two practice this?" Draco spat from his position on the floor. "Of course not. We're simply right," I said. Severus watched our conversation with a sense of overwhelming boredom. "No, you are not." I jabbed him in the chest with my wand. "Really, if the castle isn't sentient, then why does it hate us so much?" Severus merely sighed. "Regardless, I have no such power." "He could be lying," Neville said. "He probably isn't, but he could be." I frowned. "No way to know for sure. He fooled Dumbledore for years. Our best bet is to kill him before he sows dissension in our ranks." "Harry, we are not killing the headmaster," Hermione said, again showcasing her hypocrisy. "If we kill him, I'm pretty sure we become the headmaster." "They got rid of that rule in the 13th century," she said sharply, struggling to hide her disappointment. "I suspect this is a good time to mention that I am a spy," Severus said. Neville regarded him coldly. He set the sorting hat on the bed and took his sword back from Luna. "We're aware." "For Dumbledore," Severus clarified. I snorted. "You don't actually expect us to believe that?" Ginevra chirped. "You hate Harry, even though he's the chosen one and great at potions and a genius, and so handsome." Not wanting to encourage Ginevra's lunacy, I said, "You're a terrible teacher." "You helped you-know-who take over the school," Hermione said. "You're best friends with Sirius Black." I leaned out of biting range as Snape snarled at that suggestion. Lavender's head crept upwards to settle on Neville's shoulder. "You made me cry every day in second year." "Me too," Neville said. "So sensitive." She squealed, throwing her hands around his neck in a crushing hug. Hermione sent them a disapproving look, and Ron hastily averted his eyes. He said, "You haven't told the Order of the Phoenix anything since Dumbledore died, and I know because my family pretty much is the Order now." I casually acquioed the sorting hat, stuffing it into my trunk. "Finally, you're a werewolf." "Not all werewolves are Death Eaters," Ron said. "Of course they are." I paused, quite certain that I hadn't spoken. Voldemort strode towards us, backed by several of his most loyal followers. More Death Eaters were pouring through the passageway by the moment. "Right." The girl on guard duty had followed us inside and was currently giving Sirius Black, Voldemort's right-hand man, a friendly wave. Meanwhile, Fenrir Greyback bared his teeth at Ron in some approximation of a smile. Lucius anxiously tousled his hair at the thought of himself and his clone in such a filthy place, and several Death Eaters were gesturing frantically at Neville. Voldemort beamed, as if ready to get his picture taken. "Your plan was brilliant." After all, he who commands the headmaster commands the school. Unfortunately for you, Severus has always been my most loyal servant. With a flick of the Dark Lord's hand, the ropes fell and Severus's wand snapped into its owner's hand. The man then leapt from the chair and threw a spell at one of his fellow Death Eaters. Voldemort gaped. "You couldn't possibly have turned him already." "Of course not," Severus drawled. "They're idiots. I betrayed you decades ago." Another slash of his wand sent a masked figure careening into the crowd. Voldemort raised his own wand, sneering. "I always knew you would betray me one day, Crucio." Hagrid lumbered forward to shield Severus with his enormous half-giant body. "Severus, Hagrid, Bellatrix, Rodolphus, and Rabastan, who's next? Sirius Black." Voldemort laughed derisively. To be fair, the notion was completely ridiculous. To our shock, Black leapt into the battle. "I was never one of you. You only thought that because you were idiots. I don't even have the dark mark." "That was a sign of my trust." Voldemort was overwhelmed and heartbroken. He coped with these feelings, like all others, through murder. It was about that time that the werewolves rebelled and the battle began in earnest. Before I could show off my own impressive skills, Hermione pulled me under the invisibility cloak with Ron in the trunk. I frowned. What was that about? And just fight Voldemort on his own footing, she hissed. I said, I could take him. We need a plan, she insisted. Bloody hell, Ron said, staring out at the battlefield. Did Neville just take out that guy's heart? I smirked. It's nice to see he's found a use for his wand. He shook his head, freckles dark against his ghostly face. I didn't even know they were that sharp. I leaned in to whisper, they aren't. Hermione peered into my trunk. We need to isolate him from his followers. Oh, not again, Ginevra wailed as Fawkes descended from the ceiling to attack the basilisk. Hermione's lips pursed. And we still have to worry about keeping him immobile for the duration of the ritual. At least Luna's enjoying herself, I said as the blonde frolicked past the Malfoys, who were cowering in the corner, as they often do. Ron nodded, wincing at the fate of the girl's newest victim. Honestly, will you two pay attention? People are dying, Hermione snapped. Like Snape, I agreed. What? Hey, are you sure? Hermione said, oh, of course. Talking is a huge problem unless she's the one who wants to do it. Then it's fine. Severus threw his hands into the air as he lurched to the stone floor. You have murdered me. Yeah, pretty sure, I said. A curse upon you all, Ron laughed. That's Snape, all right. Especially you, Black. A death curse. That's some pretty nasty blood magic. I wouldn't want to be them, I said. Hermione let out a shaky breath. Harry, you have some of Voldemort's memories. Surely you know something. Wait, what? Why do you think that? I said. I figured it out in fourth year, and frankly, I'm embarrassed it took me that long, Hermione said. It's frightfully obvious. Ron seemed completely lost, so Hermione said, Harry remembers some of the things from Voldemort's life due to their weird connection. That's why he knows so much magic and has so many biases. Right, yes, I said weakly. That's exactly what happened. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think I was a dirty Slytherin. I would never think that, Harry, Ron said. Not the time, Hermione said. Does Voldemort have any weaknesses? My answer was immediate. No, he's perfect. Hermione flinched at this disheartening news. Can we trick him? I thought about it for a time over the sounds of battle and Fawkes' ineffectual yet enthusiastic pecks at the basilisk scales. Yes, I think we can. Oh, thank Merlin, Hermione sighed. I turned to my best mate. Ron, I'm going to need you to be the most Gryffindor you have been in your entire life. A wry smile twisted Ron's lips. I'm going to be bait again, aren't I? I shook my head. No more of a distraction. The battlefield was red, not with blood but with the blinding light of a stunner. The combatants froze, eyes wide as the light faded to reveal Ronald Weasley. He grinned and said, Oi, Voldemort, why don't you fight the real Chosen One? Dark Lord was the first to break into action, unsurprising considering the quality of his present company. That's ridiculous. No Weasleys were born during the end of July, Ron said. July's the 7th month of the Gregorian calendar. All real prophecies use the Roman one. I was born at the end of its 7th month. You know that if you ever took divination. Voldemort frowned. What about Harry Potter? He doesn't fit the prophecy, Ron said. The chosen one has to be a 6th son. It says so in the part you didn't hear. Voldemort's eyes narrowed, and his followers scuttled out of his way as he approached Ron. I always suspected you Weasleys were up to something. Your family knew about this all along, didn't you? That's why they had so many children. Ah, yeah, of course we did, Ron agreed. You've been preparing for this day, biding your time while using Potter as bait. How vicious of you. I don't suppose you'd be interested in joining the Death Eaters. Nah. If being a Death Eater was any good, then all the other ones wouldn't have gone traitor, Ron said. Voldemort scowled. In that case, I'm going to kill you. All right, Ron said. We should probably set up some sort of shield or something. That way, nobody can get involved in our battle. A swish of Voldemort's wand sent a shield shimmering darkly around them. This cut the two men off from the rest of the battlefield, who still watched in anxious silence. Only a handful of corpses shared their arena. Voldemort raised his wand. Ron's face scrunched up in a Weasley fashion. Aren't we supposed to bow first? You know, to help with our legends. Voldemort glanced at the crowd and said, Yes, I suppose this would be a fitting addition to the legend of the Dark Lord Voldemort, politician, Weasley slayer and future undisputed leader of the British Isles. Ron grinned and began to bow. Voldemort followed suit, maintaining eye contact the whole time and grasping his wand loosely in his hand. Till, of course, I akioed it. He whirled around, not noticing the red beam until it slammed into his back. Eyes wide open, Lord Voldemort fell to the floor. With a flick of my old wand, I flung the invisibility cloak off to reveal the trunk, Hermione, and myself. The frizzy-haired girl immediately rushed over to Ron, hugging him. I nudged Voldemort with my foot. Ron, I need you over here immediately. This is the moment you've been training for your whole life. My best mate came over, grinning. Yeah, I pointed emphatically with my wands. If he moves, I need you to stun him, and if he doesn't move, then he's probably trying to trick you, and you should stun him anyway. Ron nodded gravely, casting a stunner to demonstrate his understanding. With that taken care of, I turned to the crowd. Lord Voldemort has been defeated by me, Harry Potter. The Death Eaters. Uneasy murmurs mingled with the Light-Siders' cheers. Anyone who keeps fighting on his behalf shall be crushed. Several Death Eaters fled towards the exit. I twirled my wands and waited for them to leave. Good. I presume that you remaining few are his most loyal followers, so we don't need to feel bad about unleashing the really horrible spells, and there goes the rest of them. Sirius Black let out a whoop of joy, tossing a curse at their backs. I shivered. Truly, he knew no loyalty. Hermione raised a hand for silence. We have everything under control, so you can all get rest or medical treatment, or drunk, I added. Delighted yells and laughter rung out across the crowd. Ron threw another stunner at Voldemort, and somebody should probably call the Auras. We, meanwhile, will be killing Voldemort with a secret technique left by Albus Dumbledore, the lightest of light wizards, I said. I tossed my old wand into my left hand, and raising both arms heavenward, released plumes of red smoke. I was only casting with my Harley wand, but it was all very stylish. The smoke pushed against the shield, hiding us from the crowd. Hermione added a silencing charm and turned to me. How precisely do we do this ritual, then? I snatched the locket from the Dark Lord's neck and rifled through the trunk, pulling out my Horcruxes and the still inactivated sorting hat. Nagini slithered off my arm, first, settling a foot away from Voldemort's head. Next, I set the other items in a circle around him. A slash of my wand cut Voldemort's arm, and a stream of blood twirled out. Ron gaped. Is that blood magic? Just like my mother used, I said. The ritual requires the caster's blood, but because of Voldemort's resurrection ritual, we literally have the same blood, or metaphorically have the same blood. Either way, I don't have to bleed. Hermione pursed her lips. That seems highly irresponsible. You're hardly one to talk, Miss Granger, a familiar voice drawled. Our heads snapped to the corner where Severus Snape disapprovingly regarded the smoky ceiling. Hermione said, Professor. No one bothered to check if I was dead or merely wounded. How touching. To be fair, you did say you were dead, I pointed out. Hermione hurried over, making a fuss over his injuries to distract from her earlier apathy. Severus's dark eyes flicked to the thoroughly stunned Voldemort as Ron hit the body with another spell. It appears that, despite your bumbling idiocy and outrageous arrogance, you have successfully defeated the Dark Lord. Hermione said, Not yet, Professor. We still need a few minutes. Severus inclined his head. 50 points to Slytherin. I'm rooting for Gryffindor now, I said. I don't care, Potter. I'm also not technically a student. His eyes were dull and without emotion, as they always are. I still don't care. We kill you-know-who, and our reward is Slytherin winning the cup, Ron said. It's Snape, all right. Hermione tossed a stinging hex at Ron, and Severus said, 20 points for your cheek. I paused, mulling over the redhead's words. A reward would be nice, Snape. You're still the headmaster, right? Severus narrowed his eyes at me. Presumably. I beamed. Can I be the defense against the dark arts, Professor? Severus said, Potter, I spent the last year as a spy under a murderous regime, despised by all my true allies, and running a school where the students were in constant warfare with half the staff. Despite all of that, the lack of your presence has made this the most pleasant year I've had in some time. I hoped that I could spend the rest of my life pretending you didn't exist. So that's a no, then. Severus stared at me silently. I stood there, wands heavy in my hands. Mate, shouldn't we be getting rid of Voldemort? Ron asked, casually stunning him. I suppose, I said morosely, once I get over my disappointment. Severus scowled. Potter, are you holding the wizarding world hostage to get a job? Hermione clucked disapprovingly. I shook my head. No, but I may be too upset to do the ritual right now, and who knows what sort of daring escape Voldemort might pull while we wait. Ron punctuated my point with a jet of red light. Fine, you're hired. Colourful sparks shot gaily from my wands. Really? Severus consoled himself with a muttered, "You'll be gone in a year anyway. Harry, would you please do something about the genocidal maniac on the floor?" Hermione said, her natural selfishness winning out yet again. I turned back to the ritual with a smile. A flick of my wand painted a bloody heptagon on the floor. Its points lay at myself, Nagini, Ravenclaw's diadem, Hufflepuff's cup, Slytherin's locket, the gaunt ring, and the sorting hat. This ends the way it began, Avada Kedavra. Voldemort's soul was knocked from his body, but contained in the heptagon by the bloody markings. The ritual was conceptually simple. At each point of the heptagon lay a portion of Voldemort's soul, barring one, the sorting hat. Balance this out, the soul would naturally gravitate towards the empty container, forming a new Horcrux with Voldemort's death serving as the necessary sacrifice. The bloody lines vanished as the soul settled into its new home, and the ritual's magic dispersed into the air, cancelling the shield around us. Everyone peered through the smoke, not noticing as I tossed my Horcruxes inside the trunk. At that moment, Fox landed upon my shoulder. He let out a shriek directly into my ear and burst into flames. Later, many would describe this as a beautiful scene, symbolizing the rebirth of wizarding Britain after Lord Voldemort's demise. I don't know why. Fox does this every couple of years, and the second-degree burns he left were hardly inspirational. Personally, I believe he did it out of spite. Chapter 20, Epilogue, 13 years later. The first day of school had arrived yet again. The students were unusually awake this year, buzzing about the previous night's sorting and constructing all sorts of wild tales. After all, it had been 13 years since anyone had been placed in Slytherin. As I passed the green-clothed table, I nodded to the solitary figure picking at her toast and received a weak grin in return. This set off a new round of whispering. Sirius Black gave a large wave and beckoned for me to sit beside him at the staff table. I'm not certain why we kept him on as the Muggle Studies professor after the war. I don't think he's ever met a Muggle that he wasn't murdering. People said that Black was a spy for Dumbledore, but I'm not so sure about that. It seems like the old man had an awful lot of spies. Sirius, Severus, Hagrid. I'm pretty sure Lucius Malfoy wasn't a spy for Dumbledore, but he got off too. I avoided Sirius's gaze, still uneasy about his wild and unpredictable temperament, and he moved on to a closer target, Headmaster Snape. I, instead, took a seat between Minerva McGonagall and Ginevra, our history of magic professor. The Weasley took the post after Binns passed on 12 years ago. It was completely unexpected, and after so many years of his abysmal teaching, no one was really qualified for the job. Luckily, Ginevra had lesson plans and everything. Many assumed that Binns's unfinished business had something to do with Voldemort's demise. That seemed strange to me, since he was teaching for generations before I came along. Maybe he just longed to see one last war. In all likelihood, he wanted something inane that no one else would have noticed. Ginevra held up the prophet, exclaiming, "Hermione won." Of course she did. Hermione would never let anything get in the way of her ruthless ambition. Hermione, upon graduation, returned to the Department of Mysteries. After our adventures, however, she began to find the work unfulfilling and returned to her childhood dream of becoming the Dark Lady of Wizarding Britain. Her husband Ron became a werewolf rights activist. Of course, there was a terrible scandal a few years ago when it turned out that he wasn't actually a werewolf and had been lying to us all. I, for one, was shocked. Ginevra leaned over to straighten my tie and remarked, "Looks like Neville got engaged to another princess." Ah, yes, my apprentice, a man lauded as the next Gilderoy Lockhart. I tapped my wand against my chin. Is he still fighting Dark Lords in Albania? Ginevra shrugged. Hard to say. It's a Skeeter article, and Neville refuses to comment. Aside from mentioning that you were his teacher, of course. Of course. At a table below, a young Gryffindor disappeared behind the latest edition of the Quibbler, and I reminisced about Luna, who set off in search of Atlantis some years ago, never to be seen again. Some say that she found the lost city. I prefer to believe that she's dead because that excuses her for never writing. As for me, well, everyone always knew where I would end up. The first years peered around my classroom, which was decorated with souvenirs from my various victories, my Order of Merlin, a drowsing Nagini, and a phoenix tensed for attack. As minutes slowly passed by, they grew increasingly anxious. The Finch-Fletchley girl, idly tugging at her braided hair, remarked, "We should just leave." "We can't do that," Adrian Pusey Jr. protested. She sniffed disdainfully, adjusting her glasses. "If he can't be bothered to show up, then why should we? He's probably just running late. If we run off, then we'll lose a ton of points." "Rose isn't here," Zabini said. "Do you think she knows something we don't?" The newest Malfoy clone yawned, reluctantly lifting his head from the table. "She's sick." "Really? I've heard she's too afraid to show her face after last night," Finch-Fletchley purred. Malfoy glared. "She is sick. I bet she's crying her eyes out right now. I certainly would be if I were her." The blonde leapt to his feet, wand in hand. "Shut up, Finch." She drew her own wand. "Finch, is that really the best you can do?" "Sorry, I couldn't think of anything stupider than your name." The few giggling students were silenced by Finch-Fletchley's glare. "Listen here, you simpering Slytherin wannabe." Her wand began to glow with a spell, so I kyo'd it, along with the Malfoy's Harley one. The students watched, awed by my sudden appearance. "Pete Professor," Finch-Fletchley said. "I didn't see you there." "Of course not. I was invisible." "I'm always invisible and watching you." The students simultaneously shuddered. I sighed. "I'm very disappointed in you both for fighting like this." Malfoy said, "But Professor Potter, 30 points from Gryffindor for this outrageous spectacle." I finished. The two traded a confused look. Earlier enmity forgot. The girl said, "We're Hufflepuffs." I raised a finger to my lips. "SHHHH. Nobody needs to know that." "This is the Hufflepuff class," Pusey said. I raised an eyebrow. "The Hufflepuff and Slytherin class." "Well, yeah, but Rose is out," one of the Muggle-born said. "She's sick," Malfoy added. I gestured towards the right half of the classroom. "Take a seat." "Do we have to sit on the Hufflepuff side, sir?" Pusey asked as they squeezed onto the benches. I frowned, surveying the class. Hufflepuff had benefited from Slytherin's fall, swelling to 1.5 times its original size and becoming the largest Hogwarts house. In a few years, they might even have a chance at the cup. "I suppose not," I said. "I must warn you, however, that traveling to the Slytherin side may be considered traitorous to your house." "Who's first?" Zabini moved reluctantly, yet soon the group was equally split. In fairness, it was very crowded. "That was a clever idea, Mr. Pusey. 50 points to Ravenclaw. While my system isn't perfect, it's still fairer than what Snape used to do." Fox landed on my shoulder as I said, "I have yet to formally welcome you all to Defense Against the Dark Arts with Professor Potter. Some of you may know me as Harry Potter, the man who defeated the Dark Lord Voldemort. If you do not know me, I'm Harry Potter. I defeated Voldemort." There were a few appreciative murmurs, although not nearly as many as I had once received. Time, it seemed, had dulled the grandeur of my achievements. These children had only known peace. I continued, "Now on to our lesson. The basilisk has gone mad, attacking everyone regardless of blood status. Merely to gaze into its eyes means immediate death. Zabini, what do you do?" Zabini's black eyes widened in panic. "WH what?" I paused. "The correct answer was to use a mirror to petrify yourself. Though this does nothing to defeat the basilisk, that's already a lost cause, and at least you're safe. Perhaps that was too advanced for our first class." Turning to Pusey, I said, "The merpeople drag you into the lake." Pusey wrinkled his brow in a very Weasley fashion. "Merpeople very rarely venture towards the surface. Why would they attack someone on land?" I waved his concerns aside. "They want some sort of inexplicable vengeance. You try to ask them about it, but water floods your mouth before you can say a word. The last of your air is gone." Finch-Fletchley regarded me coldly from behind her glasses. "This is stupid. None of this will ever happen. You want something more mundane? Fine," I snapped. "You Finch-Fletchley fall from the moving staircase. You have the next 3 seconds before your neck snaps on the stone below." The girl gaped. "That actually happened. The last incident was in May. Mr. Abbott saved himself, but you just used your 3 seconds to ask a question. Does anyone else know what to do?" A timid redhead raised her hand. "The levitation charm, maybe." "Very good, miss." "Patek, sir," she whispered. I nodded. "Do any of you know how to perform the levitation charm?" Puttick's hand darted downwards, and only a few other students rose theirs. I said, "Then I suppose we'll have to learn it, won't we?" The Hufflepuffs nodded, some more eagerly than others. I shall spend the rest of eternity as the defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts. Of course, I would have to explain my immortality to avoid the inevitable rumors. And first, I should ensure that I am actually immortal. Come to think of it, whatever did happen to the Philosopher's Stone? As I weaved through my students, helping the clumsier ones with their wand work, I decided to subtly inquire about the artifact. So, Snape, whatever did happen to the Philosopher's Stone? Severus regarded me from across the headmaster's desk. It is in the Mirror of Erest. Apparently, you can only get it out if you don't want it. But everyone does because it makes you immortal. Even if we don't tell them what it is, they still want it because we asked them to get it. I frowned. Did you try getting a student to do it? You, and that hardly counted, since I was actively out to steal the stone at the time. My eyes trailed across the office, now devoid of spinning knickknacks and well-polished candy bowls. The visitor's chair had clearly received a discomfort charm or two, and even the old headmaster's portraits had worn around the edges after increasingly vicious attempts to tear them from the walls. Dumbledore watched us with a knowing gleam in his eyes, and on a shelf below him, the Sorting Hat leaned forward to better eavesdrop. Severus interrupted my thoughtful silence. "Not one day under your care, and Miss Weasley has already started skipping classes. I'm not sure why I'm surprised." I said, "Frankly, I'm not even sure why you made me the head of Slytherin. Because you are the only Slytherin on staff. I'm a Gryffindor." Severus raised an eyebrow. "Potter, even the Hat thinks you are a Slytherin, and the Hat doesn't think anyone is a Slytherin." I snorted. "It's clearly screwing with us. Hat, what house does Snape belong in?" The Sorting Hat's face crumpled into a wide smile. "Severus Snape is a true Gryffindor." "I very much agree," Dumbledore's portrait said. Severus tossed a silencing spell over his shoulder, while Dumbledore ducked into Phineas Nigellus Black's frame. Come to think of it, it had been a while since I'd checked in on my most active Horcrux. I held out my hand. A Keo Sorting Hat. I grasped the hat and deposited it atop my head. "So, how's it going?" he hummed thoughtfully, inwardly remarking. "Better than you'd think. I pretty much have everything I've ever wanted. Immortality, a place at Hogwarts, the ability to manipulate the destinies of children. Yes, about that." The hat's fabric curled upwards to mimic a raised eyebrow, a deeply disconcerting movement for something pressed against my forehead. "You have a problem with the way I, the Sorting Hat, have been sorting." I chuckled uneasily. Why must I be so brilliant and impossible to manipulate? No, not at all. It's just that this whole Slytherin thing is getting a little ridiculous. It made sense just after the war when no one wanted to go to Slytherin, but the Hat shivered with fury. "I gave you the Weasley girl. What more do you want from me?" "More of them," I said simply. "Then send me more Slytherins. We have standards now. I've mentioned it in every song for the past 13 years. Yes, I recall. Those parts don't rhyme very well." Sorting Hat spat. "I'd like to see you rhyme with cleansing." He had me there, and we both knew it. I turned to Severus, who alternated between attending to paperwork and sneering in our direction. "We should probably stop before Snape destroys his office again." The Sorting Hat cajoled. "Let's hold off for a while. I do so love to torment him until he hexes me." "Do those actually affect you?" I asked. "Not at all, but there's no sense in encouraging him to find something that will." We shared a good laugh about that loudly before I sent him back to his shelf with a flick of my hand. "He really is quite delightful," I informed a glowering Severus. "Feel free to take him with you on your way out," he said dourly. "Additionally, inform Ginevra that a new lesson plan has been rejected by the board." I scowled. Why should I have to tell her? "Potter, the two of you have been dating for over a decade." I frowned. "Wait, really? Oh, that explains a lot." "I don't suppose you could promise not to tell anyone that I didn't know that." "I don't have casual conversation with anyone, Potter." "Except for me," I said. Dumbledore's portrait smiled at this pronouncement, giving me a thumbs up. "No," Severus said. "I only brought you in here today to discuss the many complaints you've earned. Like you have any room to talk. You got a dozen complaints a week when you were a professor, and those were just mine," I said. Save for a twitch of the eye, Severus ignored me. "At which point you started shouting about the Philosopher's Stone." The fireplace flared up, and Fox beat his wings at it to establish dominance. Hermione and Ron stepped into my office, still wearing the brightly colored suits that were so popular in the modern Ministry of Magic. The Phoenix ignored the new arrivals in favor of glaring at the defiant flames, while I welcomed them with a cheerful, "Congratulations on conquering Wizarding Britain, Hermione." "I was elected, Harry," Hermione said. "Sure you were," I winked. "I'm certain there wasn't any coercion involved at all." She frowned, ceding my point. "Well, I suppose that depends on your definition of coercion. This is politics." Sensing the danger this conversation held to his wife's thin veneer as a light witch, Ron interrupted us. "It was good hearing you'd finally asked Ginny to marry you." Hermione beamed. "Oh, yes. Honestly, I was starting to think your relationship was entirely one-sided." Ron slung an arm around Hermione's shoulder. "But I told her, Myone, even Harry isn't that dense. Don't go putting your nose in it." "Yes, of course. I'm terribly grateful," I said hurriedly. "I'll admit that I was surprised to see you two for this parent-teacher conference. I don't think we've ever had one of these that wasn't a front for a Death Eater attack." As an afterthought, I checked their identities with a covert spell. Hermione raised her chin haughtily, declaring, "Well, we could hardly send Rose off to school without checking up on her, particularly given the circumstances." "Sides, you're our friend, so it's not all that bad," Ron said. "I wouldn't have gone back to Snape's office for anything." Hermione elbowed his side, sent him a dark glare, then turned back to me with a deceptively innocent smile. I led the couple to my desk, gesturing for them to sit in the child-sized chairs. At Hermione's unamused look, I transfigured one of them into a throne more befitting her current status. "I imagine it's quite difficult to let go of your power, even for such a short visit," I commiserated. After all, a lack of supervision had been the death of many a Dark Lord and Lady's once successful campaigns. "Oh no," Hermione said. "It's more difficult getting time off for Ron than me." Ron grinned. "Can't get away during the full moon. You know how it is, mate." Hermione continued, "My secretary is perfectly capable of handling things for a few hours." "Ah, yes, how is Malfoy?" I inquired. "Still a bit upset that his son is a Hufflepuff," she admitted, "but I think he's taken some comfort in the fact that he's one of the Slytherin Hufflepuffs. At least Scorpius gets to be the minion of a real Slytherin," I said. "About that," Hermione bit down on her lip but released it a moment later, "likely Malfoy's influence. I know a decent amount about Rose's life, of course. She sends plenty of letters, but I'm just not entirely sure. I don't suppose you could tell me." "How's she doing?" Ron interrupted. Hermione laughed softly, gesturing for me to answer his question. "Perfectly fine under the circumstances," I said. "She's been gaining influence, asserting her power, preparing her lair." Hermione said weakly. The couple seemed rather pale, though that was likely because I had chosen a gloomy, prophecy-lighted ambience over windows. "The Slytherin dorms. It's built to house hundreds. She's already setting traps," Ron winced. "And we're in negotiations for a possible sleepover," I finished. Hermione smiled. "Well, that sounds nice. It would be good to get her around other children outside of classes, especially when she lacks the innate bonding of the house system." Ron leaned back in his tiny chair, forehead wrinkled and Weasley eyes squinted. "What do you do when she gets in trouble?" "Why would she possibly be getting in trouble?" Hermione said sharply. He shrugged. "Dunno, just wondering. I mean, there's not much use taking points since she's the only Slytherin and all." "Rose actually does have a fairly decent chance at the cup," I said. Hermione blinked. "I'm sorry." It turns out that most students end up with a negative number of points but are dragged up by the outliers. Rose is one of the outliers without the dead weight. "But she's still only one student," Hermione said. I smirked. "Also, Snape still favors Slytherin." "Course he does," Ron muttered darkly. "For the moment, she's coping well," I continued. "My main concern is next year, when she'll have to be the Slytherin Quidditch team. Then, as the leaving feast is just about to begin, I will give you exactly as many points as you need to win," I finished as we crept, invisibly, around McGonagall's chessboard. The pieces knew that we were there, but they lacked the intelligence to find us. Rose shook her head. "I don't want that. Everyone will hate me." I sighed. "What do you want, then?" Rose looked up at me, her eyes shining. "I want to find the room that gives you everything you want." The Room of Requirement had long since joined Hogwarts' many legends. "That can be arranged." With a flame-freezing charm, we passed into the final room of Dumbledore's maze. I gestured towards the mirror. Rose straightened her back as she approached it, yet her composure fell when she saw her reflection. I'm with some of the Hufflepuffs at the Slytherin table. We're laughing and talking, and we're all wearing green. Weasley, focus. I snapped. She shook her head, forcibly jarring herself from the enchantment. With renewed determination, Rose set about trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone, as I did at her age. I checked the time. 9:06 a.m. While waiting, I created a throne out of McGonagall's chess pieces. There was still a bit of life to them, but the twitching of spears and swords kept me from becoming too bored. Tempus. 9:45 Rose had begun threatening the mirror in increasingly creative ways. I suspected her mother would disapprove of such blatant tactics. She would no doubt applaud her vocabulary. Tempus. 11:12 a.m. I finished the last of my grading, tucking the papers into a corner where they would hopefully be safe from Rose's barrage of hexes. Tempus. 1:00 p.m. Darby, I called. Get us lunch. He fetched us the Malfoys' latest cuisine and served it on their silver, occasionally impaling himself on my throne. Tempus. 3:18 p.m. I give up. Rose yelled, still glaring at the mirror. She had, I thought fondly, found her first nemesis. I suppose we could take a short break, I said. No, she said. No breaks, I'm done. This is stupid. I raised an eyebrow. But what about the room that gives you everything you want? I don't care anymore. I am never looking at this bloody mirror again, she hissed. That is the only thing I want right now. With that, Rose's hand fell into the pocket of her robes, and a smirk curled across her Weasley face. She pulled out a glinting red stone and held it triumphantly in the air. Ha, got it. Very good, I said, bringing it into my possession with a lazy gesture. One of the trials is hidden in the fifth-year Slytherin girls' dormitory. It should provide clues to find the others. The girl sprinted away, eager to begin her latest quest. Of course, the flame-freezing charm had worn off, and she had no way to escape the room. It occurred to me that I should probably help her before she accidentally, or more likely, intentionally, destroyed the castle. Passing the object that had once guarded a chance at immortality, I glanced at my reflection. I gave a jaunty wave to my other self and shared a grin with him. It seemed that with the loss of the Philosopher's Stone, whatever magic Dumbledore had worked on the artifact had disappeared. It was only a mirror now. Chapter 21. Armegs. First year, a dream come true. I shuffled my feet. As long as we're down here, I wanted to ask about my summer living arrangements. I can't go back to the Dursleys. I might kill them. Surely you're exaggerating, Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling. No, I insisted, glancing at Quirrell's smoking corpse. You misunderstand. I might actually murder them. He stared at me gravely. You aren't allowed to use magic over the summers, Harry. I looked him dead in the eye and pushed some absolutely fascinating images to the front of my mind. You think I need magic to kill? Muggles kill each other all the time. They've practically made an art form out of it. Besides, I live in the same house as the Dursleys. Eventually, they'll sleep. Oh, they'll sleep. And that's why I'm staying in the castle this summer, I finished smugly. Hermione blinked. Harry, sometimes you really scare me. I smirked. Or you're just jealous that I get to spend 2 extra months in the library. Hermione denied it, but I knew the truth. Anytime. Cognitive dissonance, Hermione. Are you trying to imply that I can't believe 2 things at once? I find that offensive. Hermione frowned. Harry, no one can. That's a sign of insanity. Author's musings. Comeuppance, the treatment of Severus Snape in canon is weird. He spends an inordinate amount of time tormenting children and generally being nasty to everyone he meets. But then he turns out to be on the right side of the war, so instant redemption. The fan fiction community is split between wanting to punish him for being such a bastard and making him earn that redemption by becoming a somewhat likable person. In 7th Horcrux, Severus is actually fairly likable. He's still a jerk, but he's mainly shown being a jerk to Harry, who is equally jerkish back, and depending on your view, maybe twice Snape's age. When Harry asserts that Snape is his rival, Hermione doesn't argue with him. Additionally, Severus gets to spend the rest of his life in his own personal hell, surrounded by people he despises. Harry's girlfriend, Sirius Black, Dumbledore's portrait, and Volde Hat. Of course, as Dumbledore constantly asserts, it's possible he secretly likes them. Author's musings. Serious business, it just occurred to me that I accidentally parodied myself. Once upon a time, I planned to make a fic in which everyone's misconceptions about Sirius in third year were spot on. He was the spy, tricking everyone, betraying the Potters, and now out for revenge against Harry Potter, making him the perfect candidate for the Dada position. Come to think of it, this Sirius, despite being a vicious Death Eater, would have the exact same personality as in canon. After all, being a villain doesn't mean being a drag, right? In this fic, everyone assumes that silly Sirius Black is an evil Death Eater, and he totally rolls with it while pranking evildoers along the way. Third year. The infamous Sirius Black had stolen my wand. The great Lord Voldemort had been felled by an Expelliarmus, and soon he would be vanquished by his own deranged follower. Perhaps the Horcrux would push me into another body, but right now, the only available options were my only competent minion, a fugitive, and the Weasley. I had invested far too much into this life to become a Weasley. I had to reveal my true identity. My voice shook. Wait, before you kill me, there's something I need to tell you, Black interrupted. I'm not going to kill you. I could never kill you, Harry. I blinked in surprise. I probably shouldn't have pressed my luck, but I always was curious. Wait, you are Sirius Black, right? The vengeful, unhinged Death Eater who betrayed my parents and exploded some muggles. I was framed. Oh, that's nice. Never mind about what I was going to say before then. Third year, bloody Gryffindors. You should have realized, Lupin said quietly. If Voldemort didn't kill you, we would. Goodbye, Peter. I'll kill him. Everyone turned to me in shock. What? You can't do that, Lupin argued. He killed my parents. I get dibs, I said. You're only 13, Harry, leave this to us. Sirius flashed a feral smile. We'll handle this. I snorted. Like there's an age limit on murder. Really, you're a Black. I thought you'd know better than that. Now move aside. I've just discovered this absolutely delightful cutting curse, and I'd like to put it to good use. Lupin said, this is wrong. We should turn him in. Fine, Black reluctantly agreed. I guess I'd rather not do this in front of Harry anyway. We'll take the rat to Dumbledore and he will be kissed. They nodded and shook hands. I stifled a whine. This was what I hated about Gryffindors. They always turned a perfectly good murder into some sort of moral lesson. At this rate, I'd never make that new Horcrux. Scabbers, Pettigrew's gone, the Weasley said. Apparently, while Lupin and Black had been making friends and sharing epiphanies, my ex-informant had scurried off into the night. This never would have happened if you'd let me murder him. Third year. Happy memories, Harry. How did you summon that Patronus? Hermione was referring to the silvery snake I'd unleashed upon a crowd of Dementors to save her, Black, and me. Mostly me. Many people believe that someone as evil as Lord Voldemort could never use such powerful light magic. For a Patronus is generated from a happy memory, not a nice one. My happiest memories just happen to involve a lot of blood. I defeated Lord Voldemort. I can do anything. She rolled her eyes. Right, sure, now tell me how you really did it. Sometimes I hate having clever minions. I shrugged. The school was besieged by Dementors. I wanted to protect myself. And you didn't tell me. She whined, eyes big and tearful. It was scary how good she was getting at manipulating people. I suspect I may be a bad influence. Oh well. What about that time Turner of yours? You didn't tell me that you had control over the very fabric of reality. We could have done such glorious things, I said. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, she said with a smirk. Oh, she was evil. Fifth year, career success. In the first draft of the Department of Mysteries break-in, Ron was dragged off after being mistaken for Percy, leading to— Hermione glanced around the ministry, as if expecting an alarm to go off at any moment. We're getting Ron now, right? I smirked. I don't know why we would. He's got a cushy ministry job now. He's doing better than either of us. Why, you're joking, right? I should think that would be obvious. She shrugged. Well, if it was anyone else, it would be. But when we first became friends, I thought you had a really dark sense of humor. Then I got to know you and wasn't sure you knew what jokes were, so this is a nice surprise. Fifth year, it's ruined forever. I feel pretty good about how that went, I said, even if I did just ruin the house cup forever. Hermione wrinkled her brow. What do you mean? Now, everyone knows that anyone can give or take points. Hermione said, Harry, no one knows that. Is that true? Or are you doing that weird argument thing again? No, I legitimately had no authority to do that. I don't think the inquisitorial squad did either. Oh, she said weakly. So it's completely run on the honor system then? I shrugged. Presumably. You shouldn't tell anyone, though, or it will ruin the house cup forever. I'll keep that in mind, Hermione said, clearly scheming about how to use this information to her advantage. Any time, perfectly natural, I said. Who do you trust more, me or Ron? Ron, Hermione said. I nodded. Exact, wait, Ron. You came to that conclusion surprisingly quickly considering he is an idiot. Ron is not an idiot, she said. He's simply immature, which is perfectly natural for someone his age. We're the same age, Ron said. Quiet, Ron. I smirked. As a Department of Mysteries employee, she's probably in her mid to late 30s. Quiet, Harry. Fifth year, Grey. Indy. Harry or Luna reads fanfiction. Luna flagged me down, asking, Harry, when you were younger, did you realize that everyone was secretly manipulating you, and that the only way you could survive to adulthood was if you forged your own independent path? And could you only do that by becoming dangerous through illegal potions and Time Turner abuse? No, I would have liked to do that, but Hermione is selfish, I explained. It really was a pity. We could have been greater. Luna nodded with sympathetic understanding. I see. How'd you come up with that one? I asked. You publicly denounce Dumbledore a lot, and you keep mentioning how you're neutral against Voldemort, which I think makes you a grey wizard. I frowned. I'm not familiar with the term. Now and again, one of them emerges to destroy both the Dark and Light Lords, restoring balance to the world. But mostly, they don't do very much. We had an article about them in last month's Quibbler. P.S. Luna couldn't appear in the epilogue because she had to move on to her next fanfic, where she joins a harem and acts incredibly out of character. It's a little embarrassing, but hey, it's a living. Author's musings. Ship-sinking seventh Horcrux stuck to canon pairings primarily because this is not a shipping fanfic, so a strong romance would have seemed fairly derailing. However, there are other reasons that certain ships didn't occur. Hermione is a tertiary main character, behind only Harry and Voldemort in terms of narrative weight. This leads to extra character development and the screen time necessary to bond with a character, always good in a love interest. However, Harry and Hermione take turns being each other's mentor-parental figure. They're constantly in teacher mode, explaining why this is so or why that is irrevocably evil, and why would you do that? While their friendship is bloody heartwarming, in my humble opinion, Harry sees Hermione as his young, evil apprentice, and Hermione sees Harry as worryingly immature. As she puts it, Harry doesn't even understand what being a girl means. Hermione deserves a mature, adult relationship, and Harry could never, ever give her one of those. There was also noticeable support on space battles for the Harry-Luna ship, Larimort. Insanity shipping. I understand where this comes from. Harry shows legitimate concern about Luna's feelings, and Luna is both curious about Harry and comes closest to recognizing his particular mess of issues. However, it is worth noting that both characters are insane. Due to Harry's propensity for accepting the views of whoever he is speaking to at any given moment, he would soon adopt many of Luna's beliefs. Eventually, they would begin to orbit around each other's madness, spiraling deeper and deeper into outer space, while the baffled citizens of Earth could only watch in confusion. Besides, can you imagine either of them having the interest or attention span required to start dating? Sixth year. Summer vacation in Antarctica. It was a perfectly reasonable plan. I'd been going in circles for weeks, and none of those circles were taking me anywhere near England. So I decided to go in one direction south until I hit the southernmost part of the world. From there, the only place I could go would be north. Mind you, that just landed me in Canada, but at least that was the correct hemisphere. Sixth year, negotiations. I surveyed the Dementor floating in front of me. 2 victims for every minion you return with a soul. It stared at me. You drive a hard bargain, I acknowledged. 3. Lucius frowned. My lord, I don't think it speaks English. I snorted. I won't debase myself by using French. You deal with it. I stalked off, leaving a rapidly paling Lucius with the advancing Dementor. Author's musings. Ship-launching Harry believes himself to be a 70-year-old man, so pursuing teenage girls is creepy. Harry is Voldemort, a mass-murdering snake dude and villain of the series. so pursuing teenage girls is creepy. Harry is mildly insane, narcissistic, self-centered, expects to be pursued and wooed, not the pursuer and wooer, because he is clearly the desirable one, and is vaguely suspicious of all love-shaped feelings. So pursuing teenage girls is incredibly out of character. Suffice it to say, I realized fairly early on that the only way Harry would end up in a relationship was if he had zero involvement in the process. Under the circumstances, it was either immortal bachelorhood or a relationship is certainly the wrong word with the ever-energetic and obsessively devoted Ginevra Weasley. It's cute, in a creepy sort of way, and isn't that what Seventh Horcrux is all about? I would also like to take a moment to contemplate our beta couple, Hermione and Ron. While I didn't mind this ship in canon, the whole opposites attract thing always gives me a bad feeling. In this fic, however, they have a bit more in common. First and foremost, they've spent the past 7 years bonding over their bizarre friend and how to keep him from dying in a trunk. Additionally, they grew as characters. Hermione learned to loosen up, that authority figures are shockingly bad at everything in magical Britain, and that genocide is not okay. Ron, meanwhile, benefited very much from Harrowmore's existence. In canon, Ron's jealousy sprung from his belief that Harry had everything Ron wanted, money and fame, even though Harry was just an ordinary bloke, and then the guy had the gall to be ungrateful for it. Harrowmore, in contrast, is a genius who knows all these crazy spells, and he clearly adores both attention and his, long-lost, Dumbledore-stolen, riches. Ron's jealousy is further lightened by the fact that Harry includes him in adventures that he really shouldn't be involved with. After all, Ron had his dozen chances with the Goblet of Fire, too. There is no way that Ron can compete with Harry and Hermione, but because they're his best friends, Ron at least attempts to keep up with them, though he gets no respect for this on Harry's end. Even unintentional cruelty on Harry's part, such as the stunner thing and declaring Ron a Weasley werewolf, caused the redhead to improve himself and find new interests. He even becomes a werewolf rights activist, a sure plus in Hermione's books. Also, Hermione did get Ron eaten by a werewolf that one time, so she kind of owes him. 6th year. Inside Luna's head, Ginny just apologized for Harry. They're dating. She's been saying so for years. Only when he's out of the room, though, because he fears commitment. Clearly, boyfriends and girlfriends can apologize for each other's rudeness. Hermione is being rude to me, so either she has to apologize or Ron does. After all, everyone knows they're together. Ginny's been saying so for years. 7th year. Poor planning Hermione gingerly stepped into the waterlogged house, the floorboards groaning underneath her. Shattered and water-stained pictures of a fat, blond boy littered the floor, and glass had been banished to the corners. Several members of the Order of the Phoenix milled about the abandoned home, whispering in anxious clusters. A pink-haired woman walked towards Hermione, apparently tripping on thin air shortly before reaching her. "Watch her, Hermione." Hermione smiled. "Good morning, Tonks. Do you know why we're here instead of the burrow?" The older girl shrugged. "Some sort of rescue mission." Moody stomped over to Hermione, his peg leg sending worrisome shudders through the house. He glared at the space next to her. "Potter, why is your house destroyed?" I said. "I haven't lived here in years." "Your family moved?" he asked. I shrugged. "They left after a flash flood. I've been living in a trunk." Tonks gaped. "That Skeeter article was true." The Weasley twins grinned, slinging their arms around my shoulders. "Harry, we came to rescue you, but it turns out that you weren't here to be rescued," the second twin said. "So why are you here now?" the first finished. Hermione mentioned an order meeting. "I was bored," I said. Fleur de Lacre flounced over. "Eat is fine. We came to rescue Z little boy, and he is here. So we shall do that." Moody snorted. "Right, I've got the polyjuice here. We all turn into Potter and—" "Wait, why would we all turn into someone they want to kill?" I asked. "That seems like a terrible idea." "You've got a better suggestion, do you?" Moody growled. I said, "I leave under the cloak, and the rest of you wander off looking vaguely confused." I smiled at their dumbfounded faces. They took direction easily, a clear sign that Dumbledore had trained his minions well. Anytime. Various reasons. Really, the problem with Wizarding Britain is that the people are afraid of change. That's why I, a man supporting many sensible yet liberal policies, faced so much resistance from the public, fear of change. Also the murder. A fun fact: up until the final scene of fourth year, I hadn't decided if Voldemort would be identical to canon, meaning that Harry was a shoddy copy job, or if they would be exactly the same person. I'm immensely pleased with my decision. Clap your hands if you believe. Voldemort, from a very young age, had an affinity to magic. This was because he never even considered the possibility that reality would refuse to bend to his will. That it cheerfully went on to obey his every command was unfortunate for his development. In contrast, Neville assumed that the world would actively sabotage everything he did. It was happy to oblige. Childhood habits picture this. A young boy enters the wizarding world. He is cunning, ambitious, and unreasonably fond of snakes. One day that boy will grow up to be a snake. He is, you see, a shoo-in for Slytherin. He also appears to be a mudblood. He's never going to fit in, so he has to be better, smarter, scarier. He certainly can't be asking questions. That makes him look like an idiot and showcase his shameful muggle past. So the boy figures things out on his own. But he can't get things right all the time. Despite his arrogance, he knows this. When someone says something that seems untrue, he assumes they know what they're talking about and rolls with it, going to insane lengths to prove that he knew it all along. This is how Harrymort ends up engaged to Ginevra Weasley. Seventh year, confrontations, Mr. Granger exclaimed, erasing people's memories. Is that the sort of thing you've been learning in that school of yours? No, Hermione murmured. Hogwarts doesn't teach that, and I'm not even going there anymore. I left last summer. The Grangers shared a concerned look. Mrs. Granger took a deep breath. Sweetie, you know that we love you even though you dropped out of school, right? You didn't need to make us forget that we ever had a daughter. We're still proud of you. Mr. Granger cleared his throat. His wife said, maybe a little less proud after this memory-erasing thing. I could see Hermione's hand trembling, longing to grab her wand and obliviate them again. She would then repeat this conversation again and again until she found a scenario in which her parents accepted being murdered. This would presumably occur due to oblivation-induced brain damage. To resist her horrible impulse, Hermione jumped into my trunk and locked herself inside. Rom-com trailer funky music plays asterisk. The camera sweeps over the great hall. She was a girl, still longing for the boy who possessed her body asterisk. Ginny Weasley walks through the halls, chatting with friends and casting longing looks in Harry's direction. Literally asterisk, young Ginny stands in the Chamber of Secrets. The camera zooms in on the diary in her hands. He was an Imperiode boy dodging love potions. Harry pushes away his plate. Ginevra, did you put love potion in my eggs? And love pan over the Gryffindor common room where Harry is gesticulating wildly. Eventually, you become nauseous the second you feel the effects of a love potion. Hermione frowns. So anytime you feel love, then. Could one great journey. Ginny dodges spells, throwing her own back at the enemy. Harry is invisible. Bring them together. I would do anything for you. Ginny leans in to kiss Harry. Harry is invisible this Christmas. Will they be able to overcome their many? I command the basilisk. A giant snake looms over Ginny. Many. Hermione groans. Harry is invisible. Harry, please take off the cloak. Many issues. Look, Ginny, we have enough Weasleys. I don't need the two of you stalemating. A single tear falls down Ginny's cheek. But I'm different from my brothers. A very Harry romance directed by Rita Skeeter. Ginevra is enjoying a picnic on the war-torn Hogwarts grounds. Harry is invisible. Author's musings. More than just parcel tongue. In third year, Harry accuses Ginevra of being a Legilimens after she comments on his loud conversation about time travel. A few chapters later, I realize that I wrote her as one. She knows everyone's secrets and blithely responds to Harry's internal monologue. Could diary have left more behind than a few words of Parseltongue and a twisted worldview? Dumbledore's office, after the final battle. So we were hoping that you could explain your master plan. I finished. Dumbledore's portrait peered down at our expectant faces and exclaimed, I'm even more baffled than you are. It's all after the epilogue from here on out, guys. If I were to make a sequel to 7th Horcrux, I would call it The Adventures of Rose Weasley, the last Slytherin, the first Slytherin, the only Slytherin. I'm so lonely. Yet another trailer. She was chosen. The Sorting Hat's eyes widen. You are like me. You are a Slytherin. She faced her greatest fears. Rose stares desperately into Harry Potter's eyes, a teacup clenched in her hands. Uncle Harry, what if I'm the only Slytherin because I'm the only student who's evil? She faced adversity. Look, kid, We're the real Slytherins around here. An older Hufflepuff shoves Rose. She faced isolation. Rose Weasley stands up from her seat at the empty Slytherin table. Screw this. I'm sitting with the Hufflepuffs. But can Rose face? In the depths of the lake, a merman's eye snaps open, her greatest challenge yet. Harry Potter paces his classroom. A merman drags you underwater. Why? A student asks. They want. The camera pans over the lake as creatures begin to surface. Vengeance. Music grows dramatic this summer. Rose clutches her wand, eyes wide. Uncle Harry, why are we doing this? Harry laughs. Because Neville is still in Albania. Join the adventure. Rose gasps, taking a tentative step towards something we cannot see. Aunt Luna. The Adventures of Rose Weasley. In Atlantis, Hedwig's theme plays. The camera comes to rest atop the placid lake. Hogwarts towering above it, fade to black. An unfortunately typical history class. Aunt Guy, I mean Professor Weasley. Rose said softly. The woman turned from staring dreamily at her left hand to staring dreamily at the wall behind Rose's head. Rose spent a moment convincing herself that that was a good thing. Aunt Ginny said, "Yes, Rose." There were a few titters from the Ravenclaws, and Rose felt a flash of indignation. Aunt Ginny had promised not to treat her differently from the other kids, yet here she was calling her by her first name. Rose stifled her frustration, however, because something was clearly very wrong. Aren't you going to teach us history?" Her smile widened to an unsettling size. Who needs history? Last night was history. We should have a party. Rose looked around, but it seemed that the other students had left her alone to deal with her crazy aunt. What happened? Aunt Ginny's elbows rested on the table, and she cupped her face in her hands. Harry finally noticed me. But you've been together forever, Rose said. I know, nobody ever told him, though. Rose's eye twitched. You didn't. Aunt Ginny hopped from her seat and squealed. We're engaged now. To the dungeons with ye. I smoothed down the fabric of our couch, avoiding my mother's eyes. It's just, sometimes I feel like, on my first day, I was singled out and banished to the dungeons. And why do you feel that way? Mum prodded. I thought about it for a minute. Probably because I was sorted into an empty house and then banished to a lonely life in the dungeons. I mean, it's cool to have the space and everything, but it's kinda cold. Also, the common room gets all foggy, so I'm not really sure if it's safe to stay in there. But it's not like I can ask anyone because no one lives in the dungeons. The Puffs used to, Dad called from the kitchen. I strained my neck to see him over the back of the couch. Really, why did they move then? A voice echoed from the flue. Because the castle wished to torment them, as is only natural. I leapt from my seat, racing to the flue. Uncle Harry. Hiring is hard, Rose, Uncle Harry said. You have to remember that your professors may wish to kill you. What? I squeaked. Why? You see, many of our current staff were hired when Voldemort conquered the school. No one was ever replaced, however, because it's very difficult to find good teaching staff. I was pretty sure this was one of those times when I wasn't supposed to listen to my uncle. Mum always said that Uncle Harry lies a lot, but we shouldn't judge him for it because he doesn't usually know that he's lying. Still, I didn't want to die, and Harry did know a lot about dark wizards. Really? Uncle Harry nodded. Of course. Even I was hired by a Death Eater. The Sorting Hat's new song. For those who are quite brave or just wish to look cool, the red and gold of Gryffindor is your place in this school. And Ravenclaw Tower, home of the birds, makes room for the mad and for the nerds. For those who have no talent or simply feel divided, if no one else will take you, then it's Hufflepuff decided. Finally, there's Slytherin, who wanted purebloods who were cunning and ambitious, but apparently 11-year-olds don't usually have those qualities. So mostly he just got purebloods, no matter how terrible. Fortunately, we have standards now. Wow. The new heiress of Slytherin, the newly crowned Aunt Hermione Granger Weasley, Dark Lady and Minister of Magic for the British Isles, smiled at my progeny. She's adorable, Harry. What's her name? Well, we decided that she needed a grand and terrifying title, much like Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. So I named her after all of my greatest enemies. Ron Weasley, conman and former werewolf, gaped at my brilliance. You what? Hermione pinched the bridge of her nose. What did you end up with? Her name is Severus Albus Lily Luna Lord Voldemort Potter. Ginevra smiled. We call her Sally for short. That's as many syllables as she can remember, I said fondly. Ginevra giggled, kissing me on the cheek and not minding in the least as I flinched away. Hermione frowned and said, "How are your mother and Luna considered enemies?" I shrugged. They don't precisely fit the theme, but Ginevra insisted. Although Lily did slay me when I was a Dark Lord, and I'm pretty sure Luna tried to kill me once or twice. Ron grinned. "We're real happy for you, mate, and we're always willing to watch her for a while," Hermione said, "since you're keeping an eye on Rose." I nodded, pulling on my invisibility cloak. Right, that reminds me. I should probably get back to Hogwarts and check on Rose's lair. Hermione appeared concerned. Her what? But it was too late. I was already gone. Author's Musings. A Paradigm Shift Seventh Horcrux is the story of Harry and his similarly insane friends in the somewhat silly world of Hogwarts. They proceed to take over that world, becoming professors, explorers, and the reigning Dark Lady of Minister of Magic. The majority of these characters are not responsible adults, yet they all end up incredibly influential. Rose Weasley would be the story of a fairly sane girl in Harry's mad world. Professor Black is so unfair. I don't think Professor Black likes me very much, which is weird because I've never talked to him. He only teaches third years and above, after all. I think it's because my parents were war heroes who killed the Dark Lord Voldemort, so being mean to me is a form of petty vengeance. Scorpius thinks it's because I call him a Death Eater in public a lot. I'm not sure why that would be a problem, though. Uncle Harry says that Professor Black is really proud to be a Death Eater since he was Voldemort's right-hand man. Author's Musings. Dealing with Draco, there's this really cool arc that pops up in a lot of HP fics. He's suave, snarky, handsome, a bit of a git, but super good-looking. For some reason, people keep calling him Draco Malfoy. In canon, Draco is none of those things. He's whiny, spoiled, lacks willpower, rushes into dumb plans with a brashness that completely defies Slytherin claims of cunning, and fails at literally everything he tries. Sure, there's some hints of an angsty redemption arc, but he never does all that much. At the end, we get a vague impression that he's okay now for an ill-defined reason, a lot like Snape, actually. The way I see it, there are 3 ways to deal with Draco in fanfics. 1. Just swap him out for cool guy arc up there. 2. Make him a total git. This is probably closer to canon than the previous option, but it strays into bashing way too easily. 3. My preferred method. Try to keep Draco as close to canon as possible, then give him some vague redemption primarily in the background. Do not take this redemption, or Draco in general, seriously. Scorpius Malfoy. Bringing shame upon the Malfoy name. You've got to. I tripped over a flagstone. Slow. My shoulder smacked a wall. Down. Scorpius Malfoy abruptly did so, dropping the arm he'd been dragging me by as he pushed me into an abandoned classroom, a weirdly common thing at Hogwarts. He turned to the door, casting several charms to protect against nosy passers-by. "What's up with you today?" I huffed. He hurried towards me. Wide, grey eyes stared into mine from way too close a distance. Finally, he whispered, "You can't tell my father about this." "Okay," I said. Peered around the classroom as if afraid of invisible eavesdroppers. This was ridiculous, of course. Uncle Harry had a class that period. I think I'm a Hufflepuff. I stared at him. "You're just noticing this now. It's been 2 months, Scorp, and I've seen your dorms. They're like bright yellow." Scorpius groaned, leaning back and out of my personal space. "Not like that. I mean, I don't think that I'm one of the Slytherin Hufflepuffs. I might just be one of the Hufflepuffs. I gasped. "No. I mean, I'm not really ambitious or anything. Father's always talking about how I should aspire to be some great politician, but I'm cool with just coasting by on my money and good looks." I raised an eyebrow. "What good looks?" "I'm a Malfoy." Scorpius tilted his head up arrogantly, but all it did was emphasize his pointy chin and too long neck. "Anyway, I don't think being lazy is a very Hufflepuff trait either," I pointed out. Scorpius's head fell so quickly that I almost expected a snap or crack to accompany the motion. Maybe I'm one of the leftovers." Wincing, I put a hand on his shoulder. "Scorp, don't say stuff like that. An emotional crises. What if I'm the only Slytherin because I'm the only student that's evil?" I asked, wide eyes staring up at my uncle. He chuckled. "Rose, if being evil were the only thing necessary to get into Slytherin, it would be the largest house." I bit my lip, a frown furrowing my brow. "Ha! That makes me feel better about myself but worse about everything else." Uncle Harry ruffled my hair. Good, that means you're growing up. That made me feel even worse.